The chains were cold against Jack's wrists. He stood in a line with 40 other crew members from the horizon's edge, all of them forced to kneel on the hard metal floor of an alien throne room. The room was bigger than any building Jack had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadow, and strange blue lights floated in the air like captured stars. Jack was a lieutenant commander, though that rank meant nothing here. He served as a diplomatic on the ship, a fancy title for someone who helped smooth over problems when humans met new species. He had trained for years to handle first-contact situations, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this. They had come out of nowhere. One moment, the horizon's edge was cruising through the Carina Nebula on a mapping mission. The next moment, a ship the size of a small moon had appeared and disabled their engines with a single shot. They had boarded within minutes, moving through the corridors like ghosts, their weapons making no sound as they stunned the crew one by one. Now Jack knelt in their throne room, surrounded by thousands of soldiers and nobles. They were tall creatures, most of them standing 7 or 8 feet high. Their bodies were covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water, sometimes silver, sometimes purple, sometimes green. They had 4 arms each, and their faces were narrow and sharp, with large eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Humanity had been traveling between stars for almost 200 years. In that time, they had met dozens of alien species. Some were friendly, some were hostile, but there was something else entirely. They were old. Their empire had existed for longer than humans had been walking upright. They had conquered 100 worlds and ruled over countless species. And they looked at humans the way a person might look at an insect that had wandered into their home. A horn sounded somewhere in the vast room. The soldiers straightened. The nobles stopped their quiet conversations. Everyone turned toward the far end of the hall, where a throne sat on a raised platform. The throne was made of something that looked like black glass. It absorbed the light around it, making it seem like a hole in the world. And sitting on that throne was Queen. She was different from the other. Her scales were darker, almost black, with hints of deep purple that only showed when she moved. She wore no crown, but she did not need one. Everything about her screamed power. She was taller than the others, and her 4 arms were adorned with golden bands. Her eyes were violet, bright and sharp, and they swept across the room with cold authority. Jack watched her stand from the throne and begin to descend the steps. The around him lowered their heads as she passed. Even the soldiers seemed afraid to look at her directly. She walked along the line of human prisoners slowly, her footsteps making no sound on the metal floor. She paused in front of Admiral Price, the highest-ranking officer from the horizon's edge. The old man kept his eyes down, as they had instructed. Queen looked at him for a moment, then moved on without a word. She passed Captain Amy next. Amy was young for a captain, only 35, but she had earned her position through skill and courage. Even now, with chains on her wrists and aliens all around her, she kept her back straight and her face calm. But when the Queen's gaze fell on her, Amy lowered her eyes like everyone else. The Queen continued down the line. She passed commanders and lieutenants, engineers and pilots. She barely glanced at most of them. Jack began to think she was just inspecting them out of curiosity, the way someone might look at animals in a zoo. Then she reached him. Jack was near the back of the line, standing with the other junior officers. He was not important. He was not powerful. He was just a diplomat who had never expected to use his skills in a situation like this. But when Queen stopped in front of him, something strange happened. He did not lower his eyes. He did not do it on purpose. It was not an act of defiance. He simply looked at her, curious about this alien queen who held his life in her hands. Her violet eyes met his brown ones, and for a long moment, neither of them looked away. The Queen tilted her head. It was a small movement, almost human in its curiosity. Her eyes narrowed slightly, studying him as if he were a puzzle she could not quite solve. Jack felt his heart beating faster, but he did not look away. He had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. And besides, there was something in her gaze that was not quite hostility. It was something else. Interest, maybe, or surprise. The silence in the throne room grew heavy. Jack could feel the other humans watching him, could sense their fear and confusion. He could also feel the watching, their alien eyes fixed on this strange human who dared to meet their queen's gaze. Queen leaned closer. She was so close now that Jack could see the fine patterns on her scales, the way they caught the blue light and turned it into something beautiful. Her scent reached him, strange and alien, like flowers that had never grown on Earth. When she spoke, her voice was smooth and clear. She spoke in perfect English, without any accent or hesitation. "Are you taken, human?" Jack blinked. Of all the things he had expected her to say, that was not one of them. He had expected threats. He had expected demands. He had expected to be told how worthless his species was and how they would all be slaves forever. But she had asked if he was taken. As in, was he in a relationship? Was he married? Was there someone waiting for him back home? The throne room was completely silent. Jack could hear his own breathing, loud in the stillness. He could see the shock on the faces of the advisors standing near the throne. They looked at their queen as if she had lost her mind. Jack swallowed. His throat was dry. His mind raced through possible responses, trying to find the right words. But in the end, he decided that honesty was probably the best approach. "No," he said. His voice was steady even though his hands were shaking. "I am not taken." Queen smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed her face. For just a moment, she did not look like a cold and powerful ruler. She looked like someone who had just found something interesting in a very boring day. "Good," she said. Then she turned and walked back to her throne, leaving Jack standing in the line of prisoners, wondering what had just happened and what it meant for the future of humanity. Behind him, Captain Amy let out a slow breath. Her mind was already working, already seeing the opportunity hidden in this strange moment. The alien queen had shown interest in one of her crew members. That interest could be dangerous, but it could also be useful. The game had just changed, and Amy intended to make sure humanity came out ahead. The guards came for Jack an hour after the queen left the throne room. They did not put him in a cell like the other prisoners. Instead, they brought him to a suite of rooms that looked like something from a luxury hotel, if that hotel had been designed by aliens with very different ideas about comfort. The furniture was too tall. The bed was shaped like a shallow bowl. The walls glowed with soft light that changed color every few minutes. But there was food on a table, and the chains were removed from his wrists, and that was more than Jack had expected. He spent the first night alone trying to understand what had happened. The queen had asked if he was taken. She had smiled when he said no. What did that mean? Was it a trap? Was it some kind of alien custom he did not understand? Or was it exactly what it sounded like? The answer came the next evening, when Queen herself appeared at his door. She came without guards. She came without advisors. She simply walked into his room as if she owned it, which she did, and sat down on one of the strange curved chairs. "Sit," she said, pointing to another chair across from her. Jack sat. He had 1,000 questions, but he knew better than to ask them all at once. So he waited, watching her, trying to read her alien face. "You are different from the others," she said after a moment. "They all looked away from me. They all lowered their heads, but you did not." "I did not mean any disrespect," Jack said carefully. "I know," she replied. "That is what makes it interesting. You were not trying to challenge me. You were simply not afraid." Jack almost laughed at that. He had been terrified. His heart had been pounding so hard he thought it might burst. But he had learned long ago to hide his fear. Growing up in a rough neighborhood in Chicago, showing fear meant becoming a target. So he had learned to keep his face calm, no matter what he felt inside. "I was afraid," he admitted. "I just did not show it." Queen leaned forward, her violet eyes bright with curiosity. Why? Why hide your fear? Among my people, fear is natural. We do not pretend it does not exist. Among my people, fear is seen as weakness, Jack explained. If you show fear, others will use it against you. So we learn to hide it. We learn to act brave even when we are not. The queen considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Your species is strange, she said. You are small. You are weak. You have no claws, no scales, no natural weapons, and yet you have spread across the stars faster than any species in recorded history. How? Jack thought about the question. It was a big question, one that humans had asked themselves many times. Why had they succeeded where others had failed? Why had they survived when so many dangers had threatened to destroy them? We are stubborn, he said finally. We do not know how to give up. When something knocks us down, we get back up. When something tries to kill us, we find a way to survive. We have been doing it for thousands of years. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters. Every time something nearly destroys us, we come back stronger. Queen was quiet for a while. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. My people were like that once, she said. Long ago, before the empire, we were explorers. We were dreamers. We pushed ourselves to go further, to learn more, to become better. But that was thousands of years ago. Now we are old. We are tired. We have conquered so many worlds that we have forgotten why we wanted to conquer them in the first place. Jack saw something in her eyes then. It was not the cold authority he had seen in the throne room. It was something sadder, something lonelier. You are bored, he said. The queen blinked, then she laughed. It was a strange sound, musical and sharp at the same time. Bored, she repeated. Yes, I suppose that is the right word. I have ruled for 300 years. I have seen everything, done everything. Nothing surprises me anymore. Until today, Jack said. She looked at him and that smile came back, the small one that made her look almost human. Until today, she agreed. You surprised me, little human. You and your stubborn courage. They talked for hours that night. Jack told her about Earth, about its oceans and mountains, about its cities and its people. He told her about human history, about their wars and their triumphs, about how they had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times and somehow kept going. The queen told him about the empire, about its glory and its slow decay. She told him about the other species they had conquered, how they had crushed resistance and enforced order. But she also told him about the emptiness that came with total power, the loneliness of being at the top with no one to challenge you. By the time she left, something had changed between them. They were not friends, not yet, but they were no longer just a prisoner and a queen. They were two people who had found something interesting in each other. The next morning, Captain Amy was brought to see Jack. The guards left them alone, which surprised both of them. What is happening? Amy asked immediately. The whole ship is buzzing with rumors. They say the Queen visited you last night. They say she was here for hours. She was, Jack confirmed. We talked. Amy stared at him. You talked with the alien queen, the one who conquered 100 worlds. Yes. About what? Jack sighed. About everything, about humans and about history and philosophy, about why we are the way we are. Amy sat down heavily on one of the strange chairs. Jack, do you understand what is happening here? She is interested in you. The queen of an empire that could crush Earth without breaking a sweat is personally interested in you. I know. This could be very good for us, Amy said slowly. Or very bad. If we play this wrong, it could mean the end of everything. Jack nodded. He had thought about this all night. He knew the danger, but he also knew something else. She is not what I expected, he said. She is not just a conqueror, she is curious. She is lonely, and I think maybe she is looking for something new. Amy looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Then give her something new. Give her a reason to see us as something other than another species to crush. Can you do that? Jack thought about the Queen's violet eyes. He thought about her sad smile. He thought about the way she had leaned forward when he spoke, hungry for his words. "I can try," he said. And so began the strangest diplomatic mission in human history. Every day, the Queen came to visit Jack. Every day, they talked for hours. And slowly, piece by piece, Jack began to show her what humanity could be. Not a threat, not a conquest, but a partner, an equal, something they had not had in thousands of years. The question was whether the rest of the would accept it, because not everyone was happy about their Queen's new interest. And in the shadows of the great ship, plans were already being made to put an end to this dangerous connection. 3 weeks passed aboard the mothership. 3 weeks of daily conversations between Jack and Queen. 3 weeks that changed everything. The other human prisoners were moved to better quarters. They were no longer treated like criminals. They were given food and water, allowed to move around certain parts of the ship, even permitted to send messages back to Earth. None of them understood why, but Captain Amy had a good idea. Whatever Jack was doing, it was working. Ambassador Lisa Grant arrived from Earth at the end of the 3rd week. She came on a small diplomatic ship, allowed to dock with the mothership only because the Queen had permitted it. Lisa was 50 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen 100 negotiations. She had dealt with aliens before, but she had never dealt with anything like this. Jack met her in the docking bay, escorted by guards who kept a respectful distance. Lisa looked him up and down, then shook her head. "You look different," she said. "Healthier than I expected for someone who has been a prisoner for 3 weeks." "I have been well treated," Jack replied. "So I hear." Lisa fell into step beside him as they walked toward his quarters. "The reports we have received are very strange, Lieutenant Commander. They say the Queen visits you every day. They say you spend hours talking together. They say she laughs at your jokes." Jack smiled slightly. "She has a good sense of humor." "She is an alien queen who has conquered 100 worlds," Lisa said flatly. "What exactly is going on here?" They reached Jack's quarters, and he invited her inside. When the door closed behind them, he took a deep breath. "I think she is curious about humanity," he said. "Not as enemies or subjects, as something new, something different. Her empire is old, Ambassador. It has been stagnant for centuries. She is looking for something to shake things up. And she thinks humanity is that something. Maybe, or maybe she just likes talking to someone who does not treat her like a goddess. I treat her like a person. I think that is new for her." Lisa sat down and rubbed her temples. "This is not how diplomacy usually works," she said. "Usually there are treaties and negotiations, not late-night conversations between a junior officer and an alien monarch." "I know," Jack said, "but I think it is working. She has released the other prisoners from their cells. She is allowing communication with Earth. She is listening when I talk about human culture and history. That is more progress than we could have made through normal channels." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Fine, but I need to be involved in these conversations. I need to know what is being discussed. And I need you to understand something very clearly, Lieutenant Commander. This is not a game. If this goes wrong, it could mean war, a war we cannot win." "I understand," Jack said, "but I also understand something else. She is not our enemy, not yet. And if we handle this right, she never has to be." The next evening, Queen came to visit as usual. But this time, Lisa was there too. The ambassador rose when the Queen entered, bowing her head in a gesture of respect that was not quite submission. Looked at her with interest. "You are the ambassador from Earth." "I am, Your Majesty. I am here to formally open negotiations between our peoples." The Queen smiled that small smile that Jack had come to know. "Negotiations, such a formal word. I prefer conversations." She turned to Jack. "Your people are very serious, little human." "We have to be," Jack replied. "We are a young species in a big galaxy. Mistakes can be fatal." sat down, and the others followed. What followed was not a formal negotiation. It was, as the Queen had said, a conversation. Lisa asked questions about the Empire, its history, its laws, its customs, answered some questions and avoided others, but she was more open than Lisa had expected. At one point, Lisa asked the question that had been on everyone's mind since the capture of the Horizon's Edge. "Why did you stop us? What do they want from humanity?" Was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Jack, and something passed between them, some unspoken understanding. "I stopped you because that is what we do," she said finally. "We see new species and we conquer them. It is what we have always done. But now I am not so sure it is what we should keep doing." Lisa leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "My empire is dying," said. The words were simple, but they carried enormous weight. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, year by year, we are fatting. We have no challenges left, no goals, no dreams. We maintain what we have, but we build nothing new. We explore nothing new. We have forgotten how to grow. She looked at Jack again. "Your human here has told me much about your species. You have nearly destroyed yourselves many times. War, disease, environmental collapse. But each time you came back. Each time you learned and adapted and grew stronger. That is something my people have forgotten how to do." "So what are you proposing?" Lisa asked carefully. "I am not sure yet," admitted. "But I think perhaps we need each other. My people have knowledge and technology that could help humanity. Your people have fire and drive that could help mine. Perhaps instead of conquering you, we should learn from you." It was a remarkable statement. Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. An alien queen, ruler of 100 worlds, suggesting that her empire could learn from a species that had only been traveling between stars for 2 centuries. "There will be resistance," Lisa said. "Among your people, many will not accept this." "I know," replied. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I am the queen. They will accept what I decide, or they will face the consequences." The conversation continued for several more hours. By the end, they had the rough outline of something new, not a treaty of surrender, not a declaration of war, but an agreement to explore the possibility of cooperation, a chance for 2 very different species to find common ground. When left that night, Lisa turned to Jack with a look of amazement. "I have been a diplomat for 30 years, she said. "I have never seen anything like that. How did you do it?" Jack shrugged. "I just talked to her, treated her like a person. She has been a queen for 300 years. Everyone around her either worships her or fears her. No one just talks to her." Lisa shook her head. "You may have just saved our entire species, Lieutenant Commander. You know that, right?" Jack thought about its violet eyes. He thought about the loneliness he had seen there. He thought about the way she smiled when he made her laugh. "Maybe," he said, "but I think I also might have done something else." "What?" Jack smiled. "I think I might have made a friend." Lisa looked at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a short, surprised sound. "A friend with an alien queen. Only you, only you." But even as they celebrated this small victory, danger was gathering. High Commander had been watching these developments with growing anger, and he had decided that something needed to be done about this human who had captured his queen's attention. High Commander was the most decorated warrior in the Empire. He had led armies across a dozen worlds. He had crushed rebellions and conquered civilizations. He stood 8 feet tall, and his scales were the color of dried blood. When he walked through the corridors of the mothership, soldiers stepped aside and lowered their eyes. He had served Queen for 200 years. He had watched her rise to power, watched her expand the empire, watched her become the greatest ruler that had ever known. And now he watched her fall under the spell of a creature that was barely more than an animal. The human called Jack was a disease, saw it clearly, even if others were too blind or too afraid to speak the truth. This small, weak creature had somehow twisted the Queen's mind. He had made her doubt the old ways. He had made her question the very foundations of society. It could not be allowed to continue. Called a meeting of the military council. 12 commanders gathered in a secure chamber deep within the ship. They were the most powerful warriors in the Empire, each one personally loyal to. "The Queen has lost her way," said. His voice was low and hard. "She speaks of cooperation with these humans. She speaks of learning from them. She has forgotten that we do not learn from lesser species. We rule them." The commanders murmured in agreement. They had all seen the changes in their queen. They had all heard the rumors about the human who visited her chambers every day. "What would you have us do?" asked one of the commanders. "We cannot move against the queen directly. The people would not support it." "We do not need to move against the queen," replied. "We only need to remove the source of the corruption, the human." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "There is an old law, the right of challenge. Any warrior may challenge a member of another species to single combat if that member is believed to be a threat to the Empire. If the challenger wins, the threat is eliminated. If the challenger loses, the challenge is void." "You would challenge the human yourself?" "I would, and I would kill him. The queen cannot refuse the challenge without losing face, and once the human is dead, she will return to her senses." The commanders nodded. It was a good plan, simple and clean. The law was on their side. No one could accuse them of treason or rebellion. They were simply following the ancient traditions of their people. The next morning presented his challenge to the court. He stood before the queen's throne, surrounded by thousands of nobles and warriors. His voice boomed through the great hall. "I, High Commander, invoke the ancient right of challenge. I declare the human known as Jack to be a threat to the stability and honor of the Empire. I demand single combat to settle this matter." The court erupted in whispers. Queen sat on her throne, her face unreadable. But Jack, standing among the human delegation at the side of the hall, saw something flicker in her violet eyes. Anger and fear. "On what grounds do you make this accusation?" she asked, her voice cold. "The human has corrupted the court," replied. "He has filled your Majesty's head with dangerous ideas. He has weakened our resolve and made us doubt our purpose. He is a poison that must be removed." His hands tightened on the arms of her throne. "I could reject this challenge. I am the queen. My word is law." "You could," agreed. "But then the court would know that you protect this human above the laws of our people. They would wonder why. They would ask questions. Is that what you want, Your Majesty?" It was a trap, and everyone knew it. If refused the challenge, she would appear weak. If she accepted it, Jack would almost certainly die. Had planned this perfectly. The queen turned to look at Jack. Her eyes were filled with something Jack had never seen before. Pain, regret, something that looked almost like despair. Jack stepped forward. "I accept the challenge." The court fell silent, even seemed surprised. He had expected the human to beg for mercy, to look to the queen for protection. Instead, this small creature had stepped forward without hesitation. "You accept?" asked. "You understand what this means? Single combat to the death. No weapons except what you can carry. No armor except what you can wear." "I understand," Jack said. His voice was calm, his hands were steady. "I accept." Laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Brave little human, or perhaps just stupid. Either way, you will die tomorrow." He turned and walked out of the hall, his commanders following behind him. The court began to buzz with conversation. Bets were already being placed. No one expected the human to survive. That night came to Jack's quarters. Her usual composure was gone. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Why did you accept?" she demanded. "You cannot win. Is the greatest warrior in the Empire. He has killed thousands. You are just a diplomat." "If I had refused, what would have happened?" Jack asked. "I would have found a way to protect you. I would have." "You would have destroyed yourself," Jack interrupted gently. "Your authority would have been questioned. Your leadership would have been undermined. Everything we have worked for would have been lost. Shook her head. None of that matters if you are dead. Jack reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her deliberately. Her scales were smooth and cool like polished stone. Let me tell you something about humans, he said. We have faced impossible odds before. When our ancestors came down from the trees, the world was full of predators bigger and stronger than them. They survived anyway. When disease swept through our cities, killing millions, we survived anyway. When we created weapons that could destroy our entire planet, we survived anyway. He smiled. One very large lizard with a sword is not going to be what finally brings us down. Almost laughed despite her fear. You joke at a time like this. Humor is how humans cope with fear. We laugh so that we do not cry. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. It was awkward and strange, a gesture she had learned from human cultural archives but had never performed before. Their mouths did not quite fit together, but the meaning was clear. I do not want to lose you, she whispered. You will not, Jack said, I promise. She stayed with him that night. They did not sleep. They talked until dawn, about everything and nothing, about hopes and fears, about what might come after. And when the sun rose over the mothership, Jack prepared to face the greatest challenge of his life. Captain Amy came to see him before the duel. Her face was pale, but her eyes were determined. Is there anything we can do, she asked, any way to help? Jack shook his head. This is something I have to do alone. But if I fail, get our people home. Make sure Earth knows what happened here. Make sure they know that we tried. Amy grabbed his arm. You are not going to fail. Do you hear me? You are going to walk into that arena and you are going to win, and then you are going to come back and tell me all about it. That is an order. Jack smiled. Yes, Captain. The guards came for him an hour later. It was time. The arena was ancient. It had been carved from a single massive asteroid, hollowed out and pressurized, transformed into a coliseum that could hold 100,000 spectators. They had used it for centuries to settle disputes, honor their warriors, and entertain their masses. Today, it was packed beyond capacity. Jack walked onto the sand-covered floor and looked up at the endless rows of alien faces. They had come to watch him die. He could see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices. To them, this was not a contest. It was an execution dressed up as entertainment. On the far side of the arena, High Commander emerged from the shadows. He was enormous, even by standards. His dark red scales gleamed under the arena lights. In each of his 4 hands, he carried a curved blade, wickedly sharp and perfectly balanced. Jack carried a single sword. It was a human blade borrowed from the ship's armory. It felt light in his hands, almost fragile compared to weapons, but it was all he had. Queen watched from the royal box, high above the arena floor. Her face was a mask of composure, but Jack knew better. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the arms of her chair. A horn sounded. The duel had begun. Did not rush. He walked toward Jack slowly, savoring the moment. His confidence was absolute. He had killed thousands of opponents in this arena. One more would make no difference. I will make this quick, human, he said, out of respect for your courage if nothing else. Jack did not respond. He was watching, observing, looking for patterns, weaknesses, anything he could use. It was what humans had always done. They could not match the strength of larger predators, so they learned to think instead, to plan, to wait for the right moment. Attacked. His 4 blades moved in a blur, cutting through the air from multiple angles at once. Any other opponent would have been overwhelmed, cut to pieces before they could react. But Jack was not trying to block. He was trying to survive. He dove to the side, rolling across the sand, coming up in a crouch several feet away. The blades cut through empty air. The crowd murmured in surprise. They had expected the fight to be over already. Turned and attacked again, and again. Each time Jack managed to dodge, to weave, to find some narrow gap in the storm of blades. He took cuts, a slash across his arm, a gash along his ribs. Blood soaked through his clothing, but he stayed on his feet. Minutes passed, grew frustrated. His attacks became faster, more furious. He was not used to opponents who would not stand still and die properly. "Stop running, human," he snarled. "Face me like a warrior." Jack said nothing. He was conserving his breath, watching, waiting. He had noticed something during these long minutes of survival. Was powerful, but he was also predictable. Every time he committed to a full attack, there was a moment when all four of his arms were extended, when his chest was exposed, when the plates of his natural armor separated just slightly. It was a small window, less than a second, but it was there. The problem was getting close enough to use it, was too fast, too strong. Jack could not simply charge at him. He needed the commander to come to him. Jack stumbled. It was deliberate, but he made it look real. He fell to one knee, his sword dropping slightly, his body hunched as if in pain. Saw the weakness and charged. This was what he had been waiting for, a finishing blow, a moment of glory. He lunged with all four blades, going for the killing strike. And Jack moved. Not back, not to the side, forward. He dropped flat to the ground, letting the blades pass over him, close enough that he felt the wind of their passage. Then he surged upward, driving his sword into the gap between his chest plates. The blade sank deep. His eyes went wide with shock. He looked down at the human sword buried in his chest, then up at the human who had put it there. "How?" he whispered. "Humans are patient," Jack said. "We watch, we learn, we wait for our moment. You never stood a chance." Fell. The arena was silent. Jack stood over his fallen opponent, bloodied and exhausted, barely able to stay upright. He looked up at the royal box, at watching from above. He smiled. The silence broke, but instead of the angry roar Jack had expected, he heard something else. Whispers, murmurs, and then from somewhere in the crowd, a single voice raised in what might have been admiration. The human had won. Against all odds, against the greatest warrior in the Empire, the small, weak creature from Earth had won. Queen rose from her seat. Her voice rang out across the arena. "The challenge is complete. The human has proven his worth in the ancient manner. Let no one question his right to be here again." She looked down at Jack, and her composed mask finally cracked. She was smiling. Not the small, careful smile she usually wore, but a real one, wide and bright and full of relief. "Welcome to the Empire, Jack," she said. "You have earned your place." The days that followed were a blur. Jack spent most of them recovering from his injuries, surrounded by human doctors and healers working together for the first time. His wounds were serious, but he would survive. Ambassador Lisa Grant negotiated the formal treaty while Jack healed. The terms were better than anyone had hoped. Full diplomatic recognition for humanity, trade agreements, technology sharing, a promise of mutual defense against common enemies. The Horizon's Edge was released, along with its entire crew. They would return to Earth as heroes, bringing news of the first true alliance between humans and a major galactic power. But Jack would not be going with them. On the day before the ship's departure, Queen came to his quarters one final time. She found him standing at the window, looking out at the stars. "Your ship leaves tomorrow," she said. "I know. Your people will want you to go with them. You are a hero now. They will want to celebrate you." Jack turned to face her. "And what do you want?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "I want you to stay," she said. "Not as a prisoner, not as a diplomat, as something else." She paused. "As mine." Jack had known this moment was coming. He had thought about it during all those long hours of recovery. What did he want? What was his future? "If I stay, what happens?" he asked, What am I? You would be my partner, said. My equal, the first human to stand beside a queen, she smiled. There will be challenges. Many of my people will not accept you. There will be plots and schemes and probably more attempts on your life. Sounds fun, Jack said dryly. She laughed. You humans and your humor. Her expression grew serious. I am not asking for forever, Jack. I am asking for now. Stay with me. Help me change my empire. Help me build something new. Jack looked at her. He thought about Earth, about his family and friends, about the life he had left behind. Then he thought about this strange alien woman who had changed everything, who had looked at him in a crowded throne room and asked a simple question that had altered the course of history. When you first saw me, he said, in the throne room with all those other humans kneeling around me, why did you stop? Why did you ask if I was taken? Tilted her head. Because you looked at me, she said. Everyone else looked away, but you looked at me like I was a person, not a queen, not a conqueror, just a person. She paused. No one had done that in 300 years. Jack smiled. Then I guess I have to stay. Someone needs to keep reminding you that you are just a person. She kissed him then. It was still awkward, still imperfect, but it was theirs. The next day, the horizon's edge departed for Earth. Captain Amy stood on the bridge, watching the mothership shrink in the distance. He really stayed, her first officer said. He really stayed, Amy confirmed. Do you think he made the right choice? Amy thought about Jack, about his calm eyes and his steady hands, about the way he had walked into an arena to face certain death and come out alive. I think, she said slowly, that the galaxy just got a lot more interesting. Far behind them on the mothership, Jack stood beside an alien queen and looked out at the stars. There would be challenges ahead, enemies to face, walls to break down, but for the first time in a very long time, both humans and had something they had not had before. Hope. And it had all started with a simple question in a crowded throne room. Are you taken, human? Jack smiled at the memory. He had answered honestly then, and he would answer honestly now. Yes, he said quietly to no one in particular, I am. And the universe, vast and cold and full of wonders, continued to turn.